My friends, I analyzed and practiced over 600 guitar exercises over the last 5 years, either right here on YouTube or in my online guitar academy on Patreon. Yes, I'm a big nerd, and I came to the very important conclusion that not all exercises are created equal. In fact, some practice concepts are quite outdated and ineffective, and a guitar player that works on the right exercises for just 20 to 30 minutes each day will actually make much faster progress than a guitar player that works on wrong and outdated exercises for twice or even 3 times as much. So to hopefully help you save years of guitar practice, I want to show you 5 common practice mistakes and how you can actually fix them. Let's start with number 1. So let's start with a really big, quite important topic, picking technique. A common exercise mistake I see is something like this. So a lot of players will learn one scale by heart. Very often it's the minor scale, for example. A minor, for example. And when they want to work on their picking technique, they simply pick this one scale box that they learned, or maybe even the scale across the entire neck, and they just play it up and down, trying to get faster. So really just note after note in the scale, or maybe even some patterns. This one is a very common one, for example. But today I'd like to show you an exercise approach that will help you with making much faster progress. Let's check out this exercise together. Now, as you could hopefully see and hear, not only was the pattern quite interesting with this exercise, which makes it a great picking workout for your technique, the scale was also quite interesting, right? With this exercise I was working with the Phrygian dominant scale, often also referred to as Spanish Phrygian or Phrygian major. So it has a kind of oriental, cool sound. That's the first big takeaway for you. Maybe you're feeling a bit guilty already. As guitar players, we're often drawn to just repeating what we know in our practice routines. But a great progress hack is choosing different and interesting scales for your daily picking workouts. Like this one, for example. And the second huge practice hack right here is that I wasn't playing the scale up and down. I was challenging myself with a pretty tricky picking pattern, as you can see in the transcription down below. I'm still alternate picking, so it's always down, up, and so on, but the string transitions are quite unusual, and the pattern is also rhythmically interesting. So that's the first half and the first measure. And the second half, so really cool pattern that repeats in 2 different positions. It's a bit of a finger twister, but a practical picking workout like this with an awesome picking pattern and a really cool sounding scale that you might not be familiar with yet is much healthier for your progress than just running up and down a scale that you already know. The next exercise concept I'd like to show you is pretty much the most important one we looked at so far. But before we continue, just one very important information. All of today's exercises are actually part of the new practice package I made especially for you. This modern exercise package is meant to replace all the ineffective workouts you currently have in your routine. It comes with play-along videos at very slow and fast tempos to challenge yourself so that you can practice together with me. You also get detailed guitar profiles with full instrumentation, so with bass and drums. You get detailed PDF tab sheets and you can see the downstrokes and upstrokes in them. And of course also the backing tracks with and without my guitar. So all the files you could possibly ask for. You can download it right now on patreon.com/bernd. The link is in the description or in the first comment down below. Once you join over there, you also get access to 12 full guitar technique courses, 5 awesome music theory courses, and 4 home recording courses. And if you need my personal help and input on your technique, there's even a personal coaching tier. We just opened up a couple of new slots for this month because everything was sold out last week. So click the link down below and see if there's still a slot for you. I would love to welcome you in my online guitar academy. But for now, let's continue with the next exercise. Right, so the next topic is one that concerns all intermediate players that I personally ever taught in my online guitar academy on Patreon. And it's all about developing a very stiff approach when it comes to guitar techniques. Because most players work on 10-15 minutes of alternate picking each day, then maybe a little bit of legato, then a bit of sweep picking. And that's fine, it's a good way of getting better at all those techniques. But here's the thing, if you don't have a couple of exercises in your routine where you have to put all of those different techniques together, you might develop a very disconnected playing style. So not only will it be technically difficult to switch between all these techniques on the spot, when you're actually writing and improvising, you might write something like, okay, 4 bars of alternate picking, then a sweep picking section, then a legato section, but you will never make something free and interesting where all of these techniques are connected. So to help you with this, I have a really cool exercise for you today. Check out this awesome workout. So the second exercise is based on diminished shapes. They sound really, really cool, quite dissonant and interesting, and you can move them in minor thirds. So for the exercise, I had a diminished shape from the 5th to the 8th fret, and then I just moved it up a minor third or 3 frets right here. But the interesting thing with this exercise is I was first playing it with alternate picking. That's a great picking workout because the transitions are kind of weird. And then I was switching to a sweep picking, economy picking, hammer-on, pull-off approach. So for this one, I always had the big accents with a downstroke. So the downstrokes are right here, down, down, down. And for the rest of the notes, I was sweeping upwards or pulling off with my fretting hand. So this cool exercise brings tricky alternate picking together with sweep picking, economy picking style playing, and also pull-offs with the fretting hand. And that's why it's such a great daily practical workout. You're combining all of those different approaches in one exercise. Up next, I'd like to talk a little bit about string skipping. So skipping between the strings, the name is relatively self-explanatory. It's a great idea to work on string skipping because it will train your picking hand to really follow the strings as you're playing. In the example I just played, I was skipping between the A and the G string, for example. So I do not want to touch the D string in between. So just playing on one string, skipping one string and then going back. And this way of practicing is kind of nice to develop a feeling for that skipping movement. But once again, if we think practically, you won't really encounter something as linear as this in an interesting solo or song. When you have to skip between strings in a more musical and practical context, you're usually not just skipping back and forth between two strings and you're skipping one string in between. Your picking hand has to be able to navigate across pretty much all strings, and you have to be able to do bigger jumps, smaller jumps, and just always be in control of that skipping movement. So I have a much cooler and more practical exercise for you today when it comes to string skipping. Check this one out. This one's pretty cool because I'm just playing one note, D, right here on the high E string with my pinky finger, and I want my pinky to remain in this position. I don't want it to move away, so it's also a pretty good fretting hand exercise. And then I'm descending with my other fingers on the strings. So first I'm playing on the B string, then on the G string, and then I'm even moving to the D string. And that's a pretty big jump from the high E string to the D string, especially as soon as you speed up phrases like this. But it sounds really, really cool because the space in between those two notes is pretty big. It's a pretty high note and that's a relatively low note. And with most guitar solos, all the notes are quite close to each other, especially as soon as the solo is quite fast. So this string skipping workout is not just great for picking control, meaning you're able to jump between the strings effortlessly, very big jumps. It's also pretty great for developing your phrasing, because as soon as you're able to build up more distance in between the notes and intervals that you're playing, you will unlock much more creative and interesting note choices and phrasing ideas. The next thing I'd like to talk to you about is a typical rock and metal guitar player cliche, and it concerns sweep picking. This is something I was guilty of myself for quite a long time, and it's that most rock and metal players practice sweep picking by just learning a handful of arpeggio shapes, mostly just two, one for minor and one for major. And then they just play these two shapes up and down all day to get faster and faster. Once again, that's a nice way of introducing yourself to the sweep picking motion, to build up speed and to connect the picking hand with the fretting hand. But let's think about the practical context real quick again. Is it interesting to listen to the same arpeggio being played up and down and up and down and up and down at faster and faster tempos all the time? For most people, it's not that much of an enjoyable experience. So once again, I have a much cooler and more practical workout for you that will make you better at sweep picking, but also teach you how to incorporate that into your playing so that it's interesting. Check out this cool workout. So for this one, you're not just playing an interesting pattern when it comes to this very common arpeggio that I was using, the A minor one. You're also working with a little bit of alternate picking in there. So we are mixing techniques once again. So I'm starting out with alternate picking here on the 12th fret on the high E string. So alternate picking before I go into that pull off and into that sweep picking motion. Then just a little bit of alternate picking again for E right here on the 7th fret on the A string. Then I'm interrupting the pattern again with some alternate picking right here, A on the 10th fret on the B string. And then once again for E on the 7th fret on the A string. And once again, that's not only a great picking workout, meaning you have to transition between alternate picking and sweep picking without any string noise, and you have to play in time to make this sound really good. It's also just so much more musical to play something like this in an actual guitar solo. So if you want to work with arpeggios and sweep picking, I highly suggest giving this one a try and studying it, but not just to repeat it exactly like I wrote it. Try to come up with your own variations of alternate picking and sweep picking with different arpeggios. That will greatly spice up your daily practice routine and also the music that you're making. And for the last topic, I'd like to address all those amazing players who want to build speed with their alternate picking motion. Because I did talk a little bit negatively about your typical scale exercises where you're just running through scales and you're playing them up and down in the first chapter of this video. But of course, they are great for building speed. So if building speed with your alternate picking motion is one of your biggest practice goals at the moment, I want to show you a scale workout that is especially designed for that, but it has a couple of cool twists making it a little bit better than the usual up and down scale exercises. Check out this cool workout. So what makes this one a little bit more interesting is, once again, it's based on a cool scale, on the A harmonic minor scale, and not just the A minor pentatonic scale or A minor scale. So you have G sharp in there, making the sound of the scale really interesting and exotic. The rest of the layout is pretty much the same when you compare it to the natural minor scale. So on one hand, just a cooler sound. But the other cool thing is one of my favorite practice twists when it comes to alternate picking, and it's working with odd note groupings on each string. So not just with 3 notes all the time, like we discussed in the beginning, the typical triplet patterns. With this one, you're working with 7 notes per string, which is one of my favorite patterns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. And the cool thing with that is that the picking direction is turning around all the time. So first you obviously start with a downstroke, but since you're just playing 7 notes, you're also ending with a downstroke, which means the next string starts with an upstroke, which is pretty cool, very, very interesting and great for your string transitions. And as you could see, the fretting hand also has to work a little bit because of the interesting harmonic minor shape. I have to stretch a little bit. So this really cool scale workout based on the A harmonic minor scale, it's not just your usual up and down exercise in triplets or 16th notes. You're working with really interesting note groupings, your picking direction is turning around all the time, and you're also working with a cool sound and scale, which makes it a really cool picking exercise for your next daily routine. All right, my friend, make sure to download the full modern exercise package on Patreon right now with the link down below, patreon.com/Bernd. In addition to this new practice package, you also get access to 12 full guitar technique courses, 5 awesome music theory courses, and 4 home recording courses. Just click the link in the description or in the first comment down below, patreon.com/Bernd. See if there are still some slots available for you this month. I'm waiting for you in my online guitar academy on Patreon. Have an amazing day. Greetings from Vienna and bye bye.